one chapter probably. Are we live? We are live. Okay, wonderful. We don't have a huge amount of time today. But I do want to make sure, for various reasons. Okay. This is why we're probably going to do a short chapter.
Because of me.
Well, I mean, don't worry about it. Come on. We're going to probably do one chapter, the Hungry Tiger chapter. It's an interesting chapter for sure. Come on. You want to sit back here and do a puppet show? If we have a tiger, I mean, you can get one of the cats to do a puppet show if you wanted to.
I think that'll work.
The Hungry Tiger. The chapter is called The Hungry Tiger, but it's about a lot more than just the Hungry Tiger. But if the cats come in, you could do a puppet show with the cats. But the first thing Dorothy did was to rush in to embrace the Scarecrow. So Dorothy's been saved from Princess Langwidere. Just as a recap of the rest of the book, she washed up on the shore of the. Oh, here's a hungry tiger. Hungry tiger. There we go. I knew a cat would be along eventually. Hungry tiger.
Can I just do this one?
There you go.
Like, can I just do this one?
Yeah, that'll work. But she's been washed up on the shore of Ev. She has Bellina the talking chicken with her. The Princess Langwidere kidnapped her and tried to cut off her head. Lots of stuff has happened, but the main plot hasn't kicked in. The main plot is the royal family of Ev is kidnapped by the Gnome King. We're about to get into that, but Princess Ozma rescued Dorothy. So Ozma and Dorothy are really the main characters. They're the heroes of the story. But Ozma has a bunch of wacky characters with her. This is Oz. You always have a bunch of wacky characters show up in Oz. One of them is the Hungry Tiger. That's where the chapter title comes from, but there are a lot of other characters with him. So a lot of the characters we've met before, like the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and all them, they're with Ozma, but the Hungry Tiger is really the new character that we're about to meet. Also, TikTok the robot. TikTok the robot is with them too. The first thing Dorothy did was rush in to embrace the Scarecrow, whose painted face beamed with delight as he pressed her form. We have a crazy boy jumping around.
I need to get my ginger.
Okay, yeah, you do that. Her form to his straw-padded bosom. Then the Tin Woodman embraced her very gently, for he knew his 10 arms might hurt her if he squeezed too roughly. These greetings having been exchanged, Dorothy took the key to TikTok from her pocket and wound up the machine man's actions so that he could bow properly when introduced to the rest of the company. While doing this, she told them how useful TikTok had been to her. Both the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman shook hands with the machine. So really, it's just a lot of it is the reunion. So not a lot of really new and different stuff until we get to the Hungry Tiger, really. Then Dorothy asked, "Where is Bellina?" "I don't know," said the Scarecrow. "Who is Bellina?" "She's a yellow hen who is another friend of mine," answered the girl anxiously. I wonder. Oh, here comes a dog. Here comes a big dog. Here comes a dog. I wonder what has become of her. She's in the chicken house in the backyard. Hey, babe. What's up? She's in the chicken bed. Stop. Said the princess. "My drawing room is no place for hens." Without waiting to hear more, Dorothy ran to get Bellina, and just outside the door, she came upon the Cowardly Lion, still hitched to the chariot beside the Great Tiger. The Cowardly Lion had a big bow of blue ribbon fastened to the long hair between his ears, and the tiger wore a bow of red ribbon on his tail, just in front of the bushy end. In an instant, Dorothy was hugging the huge lion joyfully. So that's Ozma's chariot is carried by two big cats. Ozma's a very powerful character. She's very kind. She's very compassionate. She's all these really positive things, but the whole image of her being drawn by this chariot of a tiger and a lion is just a cool image. That's the cover. Anyway, just a classic image of her power. But they're very flawed characters too. So, they're big cats and they're powerful, but they're also very, very flawed characters. In an instant, Dorothy was hugging the huge lion joyfully. "I'm so glad to see you again," she cried. "I'm also glad to see you, Dorothy," said the lion. "We've had some fine adventures together, haven't we?" "Yes, indeed," she replied. "How are you?" "As cowardly as ever," the beast answered in a meek voice. "Every little thing scares me and makes my heart beat fast. But let me introduce you to a new friend of mine, the Hungry Tiger." So the Cowardly Lion, just, the way to understand his character is that he always feels fear, but in the first book, he just didn't understand the nature of fear in terms of courage. A courageous person can feel fear and act despite the fear. But he thought a courageous person had to have the absence of fear. So that was his misunderstanding of the first book. At this point, he understands that. So he's pretty aware that a courageous person can still feel fear because he's constantly feeling fear. So the hungry tiger has kind of a similar sort of issue going on. But the flip side of it, oh, are you hungry? So listen to this. This is a wacky character. Are you hungry? She asked, turning to the other beast, who was just then yawning so widely that he displayed 2 rows of terrible teeth and a mouth big enough to startle anyone. Dreadfully hungry, answered the tiger, snapping his jaws together with a fierce click. Then why don't you eat something? She asked. It's no use, said the tiger sadly. I've tried that, but I always get hungry again. Why, it is the same with me, said Dorothy, yet I keep on eating. Oh, okay. Oh, you have the Tin Man magnet. Oh, okay. I got you. Is that Belina?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you listen to what the hungry tiger just said? The hungry tiger said, I have an appetite for all sorts of poor little living creatures, from a chipmunk to fat babies. What do you make of that? He really wants to eat a baby. That's crazy, isn't it? How dreadful, said Dorothy. It's pretty dreadful. Isn't it though, returned the hungry tiger, licking his lips with his long red tongue. Fat babies, don't they sound delicious? He is a tiger. Just keep in mind, I lost a few viewers on that particular point. Yeah. He's a tiger, but don't they sound delicious? But I've never eaten any because my conscience tells me it is wrong. If I had no conscience, I would probably eat the babies and then get hungry again, which would mean that I had sacrificed the poor babies for nothing. No, hungry I was born and hungry I shall die, but I'll not have any cruel deeds on my conscience to be sorry for. What do you think about that?
He sounds like a nice guy.
He is a nice guy, but does his niceness bring him any sort of happiness? So would it be right for him to then eat babies just to make himself happy?
Kind of. No. Actually, no.
It is a very complicated question, actually. It's a kid's book, but that question is a very complicated question and brings up lots and lots of really complicated moral questions. Because he is a tiger, but at the same time, he feels really guilty for being a tiger. So he's doing the right thing in one sense, but it doesn't bring him any happiness. So is doing the right thing the source of happiness? Or can you do the right thing and be unhappy and that still be the right thing? It's a very complicated question, actually. It might be too complicated for an 8-year-old, but so don't worry about it. But I'm just saying it is a complicated question. I think you are a very good tiger, said Dorothy, patting the huge head of the beast. And that's different. So you can, in book 1, in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the wizard says, I'm a good man, but a bad wizard. But really, he's not a very good man. He's not a good man at all. So she says, you're a good tiger.
Wait, what?
In The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, you remember the wizard. Don't look behind the curtain. He's got the giant flaming head. You remember the wizard. Anyway, the wizard. The wizard, when Dorothy discovers that he's a fraud, he says, I'm a good man but a bad wizard. That's the line he says. He says it in the book and the movie. It's one of the lines from the book that's definitely in the movie. But anyway, but is he a good man? What I mean, he says he's a good man, but is he really a good man? Personally, I would say no, he's not a good man. He's a bad wizard and a bad man. He also kidnaps Ozma when she's a baby, but that's a whole other story. But anyway, Dorothy's first response is, "You're a good tiger." I mean, there's a lot you can say there.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Okay. Speaking of being good, don't just burp on camera. Say, "Excuse me." In that you are mistaken, was the reply. So the tiger doesn't think he's a good tiger. In that you are mistaken, was the reply. I'm a good beast, perhaps, but a disgracefully bad tiger. For it is the nature of tigers to be cruel and ferocious, and in refusing to eat harmless living creatures, I am acting as no tiger has ever before acted. That is why I left the forest and joined my friend the cowardly lion. Very complicated, very complicated statement. Philosophically, a very complicated statement. Out of place in a kid's book, but wonderfully thought-provoking sort of idea. But the lion is not really cowardly, said the Dorothy. I have seen him act as bravely as can be. All a mistake, my dear, protested the lion gravely. To others I may have seemed brave at times, but I have never been in any danger that I was not afraid. Nor I, said Dorothy truthfully. Here's the hungry tiger. Picture of the hungry tiger. John R. Neal illustration. He's just, kind of wimpy looking. I love the hungry tiger. He's a great character. He doesn't show up a lot, but he shows up just a brief amount of time here. Nor I, said Dorothy, but I must go on and set free Bellina, and then I will see you again. It freezes. It freezes. It's just freezing. There you go.
It's freezing.
It's just freezing. And then I will see you again. She ran around the backyard of the palace, soon found the chicken house, being guided to it by a loud cackling and crowing and distracting hubbub of sounds, such as chickens make when they are excited. Something seemed... Our cockatiel is making a lot of noise at the moment. I think Hermes the cockatiel is... I don't know if that sound shows up on the camera, but our cockatiel is making a lot of noise right now. She ran around to the backyard of the palace. Something seemed to be wrong in the chicken house, and when Dorothy looked through the slats in the door, she saw a group of hens and roosters huddled in one corner and watching what appeared to be a whirling ball of feathers. It bounded here and there about the chicken house, and at first Dorothy could not tell what it was, while the screeching of the chickens nearly deafened her. Bellina. Bellina's very sassy. She's a troublemaker. Bellina's a great character. But suddenly the bunch of feathers stopped whirling, and then to her amazement, the girl saw Bellina crouching upon the prostrate form of a speckled rooster. For an instant, they both remained motionless. Then the yellow hen shook her wings to settle the feathers and walked toward the door with a strut of proud defiance and a cluck of victory, while the speckled rooster limped away to the ground of other chickens, trailing her crumpled plumage in the dust as he went.
Did she just beat up another?
She just beat up a rooster. Bellina is very sassy. I love Bellina. She's one of the toughest characters, but nobody really takes her seriously because she's just a little. She's just a little chicken. Why, Bellina? Cried Dorothy in a shocked voice. Have you been fighting? I really think I have, retorted Bellina. This is also especially funny because this comes right after the lion and the tiger being kind of wimpy characters. I love the lion and the tiger, but they are kind of wimpy characters. I really think I have, retorted Bellina. Do you think I'd let the speckled villain of a rooster lord it over me and claim to run this chicken house as long as I'm able to peck and scratch? Not if my name is Bill. Bellina's name is Bill. It isn't Bill, it's Bellina. You're talking slang, which is very undignified, said Dorothy reprovingly. Come here, Bellina, and I'll let you out, for Ozma of Oz is here and has set us free. So the yellow hen came to the door, which Dorothy unlatched for her to pass through, and the other chickens silently watched them from their corner without offering to approach nearer. The girl lifted her friend in her arms and exclaimed, "Oh, Bellina, how dreadful you look. You've lost a lot of feathers, and one of your eyes is nearly pecked out, and your comb is bleeding." "Oh, that's nothing," said Bellina. "Just look at the speckled rooster. Didn't I do him up brown?" Dorothy shook her head. "I don't approve of this at all," she said, carrying Bellina away toward the palace. "It isn't a good thing for you to associate with those common chickens. They would soon spoil your good manners, and you wouldn't be respectable anymore." "I didn't ask to associate with them," replied Bellina. "It is that cross old Princess Langwidere, who is to blame. But I was raised in the United States, and I won't allow any one-horse chicken of the land of Ev to run over me and put on airs as long as I can lift a claw in self-defense." "Very well, Bellina," said Dorothy. We won't talk about it anymore. Soon they came to the Cowardly Lion and the Hungry Tiger, to whom the girl introduced the Yellow Hen. Glad to meet any friend of Dorothy, said the lion politely. To judge by your present appearance, you are not a coward, as I am. Your present appearance makes my mouth water, said the tiger, looking at Bellina. It's kind of a running gag in the book, is the Hungry Tiger wanting to eat Bellina. Bellina, clearly, much tougher than the Hungry Tiger, that's for sure. Even though smaller, much tougher. Finish it. Yeah, Bellina versus the Hungry Tiger in a fight. My money's on Bellina. My, how good you would taste if I could only crunch you between my jaws. But don't worry, you would only appease my appetite for a moment, so it isn't worthwhile to eat you. Thank you, said the hen, nestling closer to Dorothy's arm. Besides, it wouldn't be right, continued the tiger, looking steadily at Bellina and clicking his jaws together. Of course not, cried Dorothy hastily. Bellina is my friend, and you mustn't ever eat her under any circumstances. Here's the John Arneal illustration.
John Arneal.
The guy who does the illustration, his name is John Arneal. Here, let me get a little closer. It's just Bellina and Dorothy, and there's Princess Langwidier's castle in the background. Let me make sure all the different cameras are able to see. John Arneal does a lot of just really basic character sketches of just people standing around together. I'll try to remember that, said the tiger, but I'm a little absent-minded at times. We're almost done with the chapter. Then Dorothy carried her pet into the drawing room of the palace, where Tick-Tock, being invited to do so by Ozma, had seated himself between the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman. Opposite to them sat Ozma herself and the Princess Langwidere, and beside them there was a vacant chair for Dorothy. Around this important group was ranged the army, the Army of Oz, and as Dorothy looked Around this important group was ranged the Army of Oz, and as Dorothy looked at the handsome uniforms of the 27 soldiers, she said, "Why, they seem to be all officers." "They are, all except one," answered the Tin Woodman. "I have in my army 8 generals, 6 colonels, 7 majors, and 5 captains, besides 1 private for them to command. I'd like to promote the private, for I believe no private should ever be in public life, and I've also noticed that officers usually fight better and are more reliable than common soldiers. Besides, the officers are more important looking and lend dignity to our army." "No doubt you are right," said Dorothy, seating herself beside Ozma. "And now," announced the girlish ruler of Oz, "we will hold a solemn conference to decide the best manner of liberating the royal family of this fair land of Ev from their long imprisonment." So there you go. That's the Hungry Tiger chapter. What do you make of the Hungry Tiger chapter?
Don't know.
Hopefully that's empty.
No, it's not.
It's not empty. Seiko's very angry at you putting this hand on my shoulder.
I like.
So how do you like that? The Hungry Tiger doesn't have much of a part in the whole book, but he's a really interesting character. Very typical of Oz stories to have a character with like a weird sort of issue, weird sort of psychological issue that has them hung up in some way.
After the 4th time, I bounce on your shoulder.
We might not get a whole lot of focus, but this is gonna just be a short one, and we'll wrap it up for today. See you on the next one. We'll finally get into the actual plot. This is an interestingly structured book where the plot technically kind of sort of starts in the second half, but we get introduced to a lot of different characters. I'm going to be really still. We get introduced. This is like a hat somebody in Oz would wear, in the Emerald City would wear. I look like an Emerald City soldier. The guard with the green whiskers has a hat kind of like that in book 1. In book 1, book 2. But anyway, just to sum up, because this is a short one, so we're going to wrap it up in a second. But yeah, we get introduced to a lot of different characters with a lot of different issues. But I think one of the interesting issues here is the way rank works in Oz and royalty. So did you notice what she said about the soldiers? She has generals and colonels. These are really high-ranking soldiers, but she has only one really low-ranking soldier, and he only exists for them to command. What do you think about that? You think that would work?
Not really.
But I mean, that's sort of a parody of hierarchy. I mean, there's a lot of ways to read that. I mean, it's kind of a complicated idea, sort of riffing on just the nature of hierarchies in war or whatever other sort of situation, but also just the way they treat royalty. There's kind of a complicated thing about the Oz books. They're very American stories. So there's a lot of stuff about democracy in all the Oz stories. But there's also a lot of royalty in the Oz stories. So you have Princess Langwidere, who's one of the most awful characters in the whole series. She's cutting people's heads off. But what really happens to her? She's just forgiven. And on the one hand, you could say that's just because Ozma is a good princess and she's kind and forgiving. But Ozma also has this thing about royalty where she kind of is forgiving of royalty a lot more than any other type of character. But anyway, and the way Dorothy talks about Bellina fraternizing with common chickens and stuff like that, you have these little hints of sort of that other side of more of a hierarchical, aristocratic sort of perspective on hierarchy. But anyway, these are complicated issues. It's a kid's book, but it's got a lot of complicated issues in it to talk about. But anyway, we'll wrap it up for today. See you on the next.
Bye.
with crinkling can sounds in the background. We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Okay.